I had no home to rely on, driving around in a passenger van, dreaming of when I'd ever begin to start my life. That's when I moved to the city to be on the stage, but the curtain had closed. You walked in the room, and that's when I knew that I was home, and my life will begin. Didn't believe it was true till I met somebody. I met somebody like you. Had no direction to move till I met somebody. I met somebody like you. You took a flight from the desert to take up a room with a mutual friend. Couches and wine and everything's fine. Just one day at a time, and it gets you by. I didn't believe it was true till I met somebody. I met somebody like you. Had no direction to move till I met somebody. I met somebody like you. Somebody like you. Somebody like you. I was just fading away till I met you. I was just notes on a page till I met you. I never imagined the day when I'd meet somebody like you. Couldn't believe it was true till I met somebody. I met somebody like you. Somebody like
Well, good morning and welcome to Crossroads. We are so glad you are joining us, whether it's here in the building or online. Hi, Mum and Dad. If you're able, would you stand and sing with us? We can say all of the right things, preach a sermon all day long, and still get it wrong. Gotta have love. Oh, they're gonna know us by our love. And we can build the tallest steeples, lift our voices to the sky, but they'll only get so high without love. Oh, they're gonna know us by our love. So come on, all my sisters and brothers, we can all give a little more out to each other when it's all said and done. They're gonna know us by our love. We can't get to where we're going till we decide to let them go. All our reasons to withhold all our love. Oh, never make it without love. No, so come on, all my sisters and brothers, we can all give a little more out to each other when it's all said and done. You're gonna know us by our love.
Welcome to Crossroads Church. Whether you're connecting online, in person, or on demand, thank you for making this time part of your week. If you are new to Crossroads, you might be asking yourself, what is this place all about? Well, it's pretty simple. Peace on earth. We are an open and affirming community of people committed to following the peacemaking path of Jesus. And this peacemaking path leads us to focus our work on rewriting what we call the 5 unacceptable truths. These unacceptable truths are 5 realities that hinder human flourishing and destroy peace on earth. Together, we work to replace spiritual emptiness with spiritual vitality, poverty with physical and financial flourishing, fear of the other with inclusion and affirmation, illiteracy with education and opportunity, and modern-day slavery with freedom. This is what we mean when we say, hope is here. Over the next hour, we will experience the divine mystery together as we sing a few songs, listen for wisdom, and share in communion so that we might leave here inspired and equipped to follow the peacemaking path of Jesus in our everyday, normal lives. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God.
Reach out now and take our hand. Help somebody while we can. Things will get better when we learn to love somebody, love somebody. Reach out now and take our hand. Help somebody while we can. Things will get better when we learn to love somebody, love somebody. Reach out now and take a hand. Help somebody while we can. Things will get better when we learn to love somebody, love somebody. Reach out now and take a hand. Help somebody while we can. Things will get better when we learn to love somebody, love somebody. So come on, all my sisters and brothers, we can all give a little more out to each other when it's all been said and done. You're gonna know us by our love. When it's all been said and done, we're gonna know us by our love.
Have a seat. Welcome to Crossroads. My name is Wendy, and I am the director of our Partners in Hope. As you come in today, you should have received a program. If not, raise your hand, and a room host will be happy to bring one to you. If you are new here today, welcome. The program folder is designed specifically for you with information that might be helpful. Inside your program folder are a few things that I want to point out. Everyone, go ahead and take out that Connect card or click on it if you're in the app, the weekend section. The Connect card is for everyone to fill out every week. If you are a regular attender, just put your name and email address and check that box, regular attender. If you are new here, please check that box, new here, and fill out as much information as you are comfortable sharing. If this is your first time connecting this morning, we have a gift for you. It is a book called The God We Never Knew. It is especially helpful if you've been deconstructing ways of thinking about God that were handed to you but no longer make sense. So on your way out of the auditorium, just grab a copy from one of the tables in the back, or better yet, come see me at the Fresh Perspective banner in the atrium after the service. I'd love to meet you and answer any questions that you may have about Crossroads. But don't ask me any math questions, don't ask me any personal questions, but you can ask me about my new dog, Luna. One big thing I don't want you to miss this morning is that our next O2 weekend is coming up on Labor Day weekend, Saturday, August 31st. O2 stands for online only, and that's exactly what it means. On O2 weekends, we do not gather in person on Sunday morning, so don't show up here. This gives our awesome volunteers, staff, and everyone a chance to catch a breath. Instead of a Sunday morning gathering, you can watch a special online-only broadcast wherever your adventures may take you over Labor Day weekend. This season's O2 broadcast will feature 2 brand new music videos, as well as a conversation with Ryan and Brooke, filmed in a secret location. That's part of the You Asked For It series, and you don't want to miss it. So mark your calendars now for O2 on August 31st. One final note, we are beginning to think about our next Happy Givers trip to Puerto Rico with Partners in Hope. Happy Givers is one of our partners, and they are doing excellent work addressing one of the 5 unacceptable truths in their community. The next Happy Givers trip is scheduled for January 20th through the 30th, 2026. We'll travel to Vega Baja, Puerto Rico, and partner with them on whatever projects they're working on and continuing to build our special relationship with them. And this is our 4th year going. If you are interested in learning more about that partnership and the trip in particular, please join me for an interest meeting next Sunday, August 10th, directly following the service in the conference room upstairs in the office. And whether you can attend that meeting or not, please check the interest box on the back of your Connect card, and I'll be sure to pass along all the important information. So now we're ready to jump back into our series, You Asked For It, and Ryan will be up in just a moment.
What you think about that? What you think about anything? What you think about you? What you think about me? What you think about that? What you think about that? What you think about anything? What you think about you? What you think about me? What you think about that? I get so sick and tired of faking all the moves. I know everything that comes between us. I'm gonna let you stew.
Good morning. Well, it's great to see everybody. My name is Ryan. I'm the lead pastor here at Crossroads Church. If you're a guest this morning, or if you're tuning in for the first time, or if you're out in the atrium, whatever it might be, or if you're listening on demand, thank you for taking some time to be together in some way, whether it's online or in person. It's been a great series. We're exploring big questions that people have and are asking on the back of the Connect card. We gathered these kind of in the spring, and so that's what we're doing. But if you are a guest today, thanks for being here. Your experience today might evoke some questions. And if that happens, or if you are interested and you'd like to connect, I would love to do that. Inside of that program is my cell phone number, 207-608-1106. Shoot me a text message and we will set up a time to have coffee or whiskey or breakfast or lunch or dinner or whatever works for you. And I'd love to answer any questions you might have about Crossroads, about myself, about my journey. I'd love to hear about your journey, why you are here, why you came back. That's an even better question sometimes. right? So the first time is really difficult. The second time, you got to start questioning things, like, why am I here? So it's good. I do want everybody to know, like right now, everybody do me a favor, just take a nice, big, deep breath, because today's different, okay? Today is, and you're like, and how is that different than any other Sunday? But no, today's kind of like show, tell experience, right? So we're answering a question today that really we thought the best way to talk about this question was to kind of live into it, all right? So if you're here today and you love sermons or talks that are rich with Bible verses, today's not your day. Just going to tell you, today's not your day. Because we're talking about a couple of topics that, quite honestly, the Bible has been used to, like, justify how to think about these in many different ways, even to the point of murdering people, okay? So I felt like it might be safer to just talk about these topics more honestly without involving the Bible. So I will reference it and talk about some verses, but there's no verses up on the screen. You have no fill-ins today, because here's what's going to happen. I want to give you a little map. Normally, we have communion at the end of our service. We're going to have it kind of in the middle today, and then we're going to have some baptisms. And in between it all, we're going to have a couple of songs, and you're going to have to listen to me 2 or 3 times. So everybody close your eyes, and if you want to slip out now, you can do it. You can go, maybe I'll try it next week, okay? So here's the question, all right? The question that was posed was this: what is up with communion and baptism? Does communion save us? Does communion produce, and is it something that saves us? Same thing with baptism. Now, let me first of all, just say this and shock and awe everybody in the room that grew up in spaces similar to mine. Okay, let's first tackle this word in the question, saved. Big word. Does it save us? Well, let's talk about the word salvation for a second, just real quick. Now, in the New Testament, particularly this guy named Paul, he writes a lot and uses this word saved or salvation. But what you need to know, and maybe you don't know this, is that 99% of the time, if not all of it, Paul, when he uses the word saved, he's talking about something that happens in the future. Okay? So when Paul talks about being saved, he is not talking about being saved in the moment. He's not talking about doing something that saves you from hell or eternal damnation, which is a construct that comes out of the Middle Ages. Paul is saying, guess what, gang? I've got this thought. I think this Jesus is going to come back and burn the place down. That's what's going to happen. So Paul was very apocalyptic. And what Paul was preaching and proclaiming was based upon this deep belief that in his lifetime, this Jesus was going to come back from heaven and judgment was going to take place. And when that happened, you would be saved from that. Okay? Now, spoiler alert, Paul was wrong. I don't know if you know it or not. Jesus didn't come back in his lifetime. Paul died. Now, people have been doing mental gymnastics with that one for a long time, rather than just saying part of the human experience is being wrong about God. How many of y'all have ever been wrong about God? How many of you in the room grew up in a church world and you were like, God told me, and then you went and did it and it was a disaster and you were like, maybe it wasn't God? Anybody? Oh, this room never. This side never. This side, everybody raised their hand. Oh, yeah, God's told me things, but they never got it wrong. All of us over here are getting stoned, okay, according to Old Testament law. You all get to throw the stone, so congratulations, right? So we get it wrong, and that's actually what I think is beautiful about our sacred texts, the scriptures, is that they don't have to be perfect to be beautiful and powerful. You don't have to get it right. That's a huge part of grace. So here's the thing. Is communion, does baptism, do they produce salvation? My quick answer is no, because here's the shocker. I don't think you need to be saved. Like that. Okay? I don't think that the project that Jesus was on was saving you from eternal hell from a God who was very petty. that you couldn't be around because you're a sinful person, right? That construct, that idea of the gospel never comes out of Jesus' mouth that we have in the text. Jesus said what? What is the gospel? He said, I'm here to proclaim good news. That's what the word gospel means. And he quoted a passage out of Isaiah, which was to proclaim good news to the poor, to those that are in prison, to those that are hungry, right? Like for Jesus, this was a project of justice. For Jesus, this was a project of righteousness, of how we treat one another, a project of mercy, okay? So let's just establish as we talk about these two things today, communion, the Eucharist, the Lord's Supper, whatever words you maybe have heard about. If you've never heard those words before, congratulations. You're probably doing okay in life, all right? For the rest of us, we have some baggage maybe, okay? And baptism. So these things are not, especially in some constructs they are. In some places, they are definitely thought about as producing salvation from hell. Here at Crossroads and in huge swaths of the Christian tradition, that's not what they're about, okay? So let's jump in and talk for a second about, let's start with this thing called communion. If you're sitting at a table, you see these little shot glasses that have juice in them, gluten-free, and bread, gluten-free. If you're sitting in the bleachers or at the sides, you see these tables, which is where you go to every week. Oh, sorry, Parker. I do not want to mess up his hands. Okay. He's going to start chopping me in the throat just to get me back. Some of you will get that joke on your way out. So we have these trays, right? The hubcaps. I call them hubcaps, right? We've got hubcaps with juice and bread in them. And can we just acknowledge it's a little weird? No, this is perfectly normal to you people, right? Like, could somebody tell me where else in your life you get served little cups of juice and bread out of hubcaps? Okay, so let's just honor that what we do here is a little strange, okay? That this is an odd thing that goes back a long time, all right? But what this is a ritual, okay? So communion is a ritual. And it's a ritual of, first of all, remembrance. It's a ritual of a reminder. It reminds us of something. And it's a ritual that helps us reflect. Okay? So those are the 3 R's I want you to think about when we talk about this idea of communion. And it goes back, like if you're not familiar with the history, just very quickly, it goes back to a story in the Gospels where Jesus gathers with his disciples at something that became known as the Last Supper. Depending upon which gospel you read, it was actually the Passover. And in other gospels, it wasn't. It was just a meal that they were sharing together. And some of you, that's going to blow your mind because you've been told your whole life that it was the Passover, but it's only the Passover in John. Like in the other places, it's just kind of a meal that they're sharing together, right? Or it's in a couple of the Gospels, right? But it's this idea that it comes from a story in Jesus' life where he gathered with his disciples and shared a meal together. And in the Passover context, he took a couple of these very symbolic elements and it's reformulated in the story, right? So the early church takes this example of Jesus and it says, Jesus is now like he's replacing the Mosaic law. He's replacing this part of our tradition. These were Jewish people, and he's fulfilling it. Not really replacing it, but fulfilling it. And so what evolves out of that is this ceremony that develops where Jesus, in the story, he takes the bread, he breaks it, he prays over it, he passes it out, and he says, this is my body that's broken for you. And he tells them to eat it. And then at the end of the meal, he takes the final cup from the Passover supper. He blesses that cup, and then they partake of that cup together. And he says, this is my blood, which is poured out for you. Because remember, they lived in a world where covenants were enacted through the shedding of blood, right? That was how relationships took place between entities that had different variances of power. And so he's kind of reenacting and saying, this is what's going to happen. Now, this is the story that flows out of the life of Jesus. And let's just honor that we don't know historically how accurate that is. But this is theology, not history, and they're two different things. Everybody take a nice deep breath. That's a hard one. That's a hard one, okay? But theology is not history, and it doesn't mean that they're not important or valuable or truth-filled, but they're two different things. So the story of the supper and the breaking of the bread is about meaning making. When you're living in the space where you're like, this Jesus gave his life, he died. Like, how do we equate that he died a criminal's death, that he was killed, that he was killed by the state legally? Like, what do we do with that? And so it gets interpreted, and they experience Jesus as a living reality post that death. And so these stories formulate and they get passed around and traditions develop out of them. So that in the early church, you would have communities gathering together and they would share a meal. Like this happened to Paul with his community. So he had a bunch of folks in a town called Corinth and they kind of began to follow Jesus and they had this meal together. And it was this shared meal in community. It wasn't a little piece of bread that they nibbled on and a little, it was a full-on meal. And the people were all crazy. And they started eating everything up, and then the slaves and the people who had to work all day long, when they got to the meal, there was no food left. And so people tattled on one another and told Paul, this is what these people are doing. And so Paul writes a letter, and he's like, what are you doing, people? Like, eat at home. Don't come here all hungry and eat everything, and then the folks that really need the food don't get it. Eat at home. And when you gather, he talks about coming in the right spirit together. And so there's this thing that develops. And communion was always this thing that the community did, that everyone's reflected in. And so first of all, it's a reminder of Jesus. Paul would say, whenever you take the bread, whenever you take the cup, you proclaim, he would say, the Lord's death and resurrection until he comes. Why? Because Paul believed that Jesus was going to come back under a framework that he felt under apocalypticism in the time that he lived, okay? So that's what he would say. And so we still gather and do this. So it's a reminder. When we gather, we're reminded of Jesus' death, that Jesus died an unjust death at the hands of empire and religion. Before we interpret it theologically, let's understand it historically. I'm a big believer that the cross has its power primarily in its history. And its history is a vehicle of oppression and violence and control and manipulation by the state, and it was perfectly legal. And we've lost that. We've lost that our tradition is founded by a person who was killed and murdered unjustly in the name of law and order. I'm going to let that one sink in for just a second. I'm going to let you hold that one. Law and order was the Roman way. You crucified criminals who were insurrectionists, and you put them up there for everybody to see. This is what happens when you go against Rome. Law and order was the excuse for killing Jesus. Don't ever think it was anything else from a historical standpoint. Now, how we make meaning out of tragedy is a totally different story. We call that theology. But history says if we lose the first and foremost reality of the cross, we miss it all. So at Crossroads, we gather around this table to remind us of what power and empire does. It leverages words like law and order to oppress and to murder those that they want silenced. I should close eyes and let people leave at this point. Okay? So it's a remembrance. And it's also a reminder. It's a ritual of reminding us. So we remember Jesus. We remember his death. We remember the power of the resurrection, the principle, the story of it, what it means, what it challenges us to do. But it also reminds us of who we are. It reminds us that we are taking this, and symbolically, when it's called his flesh and his blood, that we are becoming a peacemaker. That it's the reminding of us, remembering of Jesus, that empowers us to be peacemakers in our everyday normal lives, focused on healing the world, not through power, not through oppression, not through violence, but through love and inclusion and forgiveness. That's what we do. And then communion is a reflection. It's an opportunity for us every week. It's why we do it every week, is we hear a challenge, right? And we hear a challenge that comes from our experience. We hear a challenge that comes from our scriptures. We hear a challenge that comes from like science. Well, that's kind of crazy, I know. We hear a challenge about what it means to love our neighbor, what it means to love ourselves, what it means to live in this presence of God every week. And then we come to this table with a question: what is God inviting you into? Well, God's first invitation is to be a peacemaker. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Not a trick question. Children of God. That's what we're all about here. So it is a time to reflect on, as a peacemaker, what did I just hear? What did I just experience? Was there a song that day? Did I bring something in with me into this space? Did I click the watch now button with some frustration in my heart? And as I've listened and as I've experienced the music and as I've experienced a bit of wisdom as we've explored that together, what is the divine presence experienced in community inviting me into? And so that reminds us that the table is, in fact, an invitation. It's not your table. It's not my table. It's not the Roman Catholic Church's table. It's not the Protestants' table. It's not the Methodist table. It's not the Charismatics' table. It's not the Evangelicals' table. It is the Lord's table. This is Jesus' table. And when we gather, the only person who gets to say who isn't invited is Jesus. Not me, not you, not the Roman Catholics, not the Methodists, not the Evangelicals, not the Charismatics. The only person who gets to tell you you are not invited is Jesus. And here's the thing, if you think Jesus is not inviting you, come talk to me and I'll set you straight. Because Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden." Jesus told his disciples, go out into the highways and the byways, the crossroads of the world, and invite everybody in, the good and the bad. How many of y'all are good? Oh, you're going to need to hear next week's talk if you can't raise your hand. How many of y'all are good? It's not a trick question. You are good. This is part of the problem of religion, people. How many of you are good? I'm going to wait until every freaking one of you raises your hand. You are good. How many of you are bad? Raise your hand up. Come on. You're not. Oh, my gosh. It lives in all of us. The cartoons get it right. I just want everybody to know, the angel and the demon, right? So you call everybody in. And you know who doesn't want everybody to come in? Religious know-it-alls. And one of our guarantees here is that there are no know-it-all leaders. That's how I get to keep my job. So the table is a reminder that everybody's welcome, that this is a space where we experience grace, and it is for every person. See, religion wants to make it an insider moment, a space that says we're the in ones, but grace makes it an everyone moment. And it's a reminder that that is what we live in. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have communion together right now. And everyone is invited in this moment. And we're going to do a little different. Normally, you come and receive communion, and then you just take it as you are and your time. But today, we're going to hold it, right? So we want everybody at your tables during this song, you can serve one another. If you're in the sides here or in the back, you can come to the table, grab the cup and the bread, but hold it. Just hold it. And then at the end of the song, we're all going to receive communion together, okay? So if you are able to and would like to, I'm going to invite you to stand for this song. And that makes it easier for those. If you're in chairs, I would encourage you to exit to your left and return to your right. It'll make it a little easier. If you're in the back on the bleachers, head on down. Grab the elements. Listen to this song, which speaks to the heart of the table. And then hold the elements, and we'll take them together in just a moment.
You're not sure who you really are, when all you feel is the shape of your scars, and you have more wounds than you can count. Open your eyes, look all around. You aren't alone, this is your home. Come and remember who you are. Do this to remember who I am. Come and remember you belong here. Oh, belong here. When you don't know how to forgive, when locked doors seem like the only you've got more questions than you can count. Open your eyes, look all around. You aren't alone, this is your home. Come and remember who you are here. Do this to remember who I am. Come and remember you belong. All belong here. Come and remember who you are here. Do this to remember who I am. Come and remember you belong here. Oh, belong here.
Close your eyes for just a moment. I just want you to take a couple of deep breaths. And as you're breathing, maybe first just consider, what are you grateful for in this moment? As you hold this bread and this cup that reminds us that we are loved, that we are worthy of love, that love is the Savior of the world, that love saves us from greed and anger and hatred and violence. What is it that you are grateful for? And now as you take another breath, consider where you need to receive grace to be human, to be hurting, and to be healed. Where do you need to say, it's okay for me to stand in this space not knowing what I believe, not knowing with certainty anything really about the divine other than I'm loved? Where do you have to give yourself permission to just be in that kind of chaos and to allow this love that we experience in this moment to be a healing grace? And now I would encourage you to do something a little harder. Is to maybe consider how you might offer more grace to someone in your life who is hurting. How you might be able to offer grace to those around you who in their hurt others. And then now the most difficult one to reflect on is to consider how you might be or have participated in the hurting. How in your own life, through your own pain and through your own experiences, you might have participated in the wounds of another, in the wounding of this world. And consider how there's grace for that reality, and that when we experience that grace, we live free from condemnation, and we live empowered to do better when we know better. And so when we gather at this table, we remember Jesus and his death at the hands of empire and religion. We remember his resurrection as God's choice, as God saying yes to love and forgiveness and grace. We're reminded that we are peacemakers who walk a path of love, of enemy, a path of inclusion, a path of grace, and a path of mercy. And today we reflect on where and how we might actively participate in the healing of our world. The body of Christ broken for you. Take and eat. And the blood of Christ shed for you and all 8 billion people on this planet. Take and drink. God, open our hearts to know that this is a table for everyone, regardless of belief, behavior, certainty. It's a table that reminds us that we are all loved, that we are all human, that we are all valuable. Amen. Amen. All right, go ahead and have a seat. Show and tell part 1 done. Check the box. It can be a very meaningful experience every week. It can become mundane if we're not careful, but it can be a very meaningful moment to remind us of what our lives are about in the coming week and what our lives have been about. So if communion is a ritual, and we actually here repeat it regularly, we repeat it weekly, it sustains us, it nourishes us, it's a shared act of remembrance. It's not an exclusionary moment. It's not saying we're in, everybody else is out. It's saying everybody come to the table and be on your journey together. If we experience grace in it, then what is baptism? What is baptism? Well, baptism isn't really a ritual. We don't do it regularly. You don't get baptized every week, thank God. Right? Well, some of you are like, one's enough, right? But it's a ceremony, and ceremonies mark these beautiful moments in our lives. They're kind of threshold events, right? These ceremonies. Somebody shout out a ceremony that you think about? A wedding, most people think of me, it's a threshold event. Life is theoretically different after that ceremony, yeah. So we have these ceremonies that we go through. Now, baptism is interesting because it's always been evolving in what it means and how it's practiced. So you can look at ancient Israelite religion, and there were all kinds of like ritual cleansings that you would go through that were baptisms of sorts. You can look at the story of John the Baptizer. How many are familiar with that dude? Went out, lived in the wilderness, wore really uncomfortable clothes, ate locusts. It's funny how we held on to the baptism part, but those things we were like, no, that's more time-based. That's actually what we do for people that want to get baptized. We're like, 40 days in the wilderness, put on your camel hair, only eat crickets. That's how we do it here, right? I mean, those of you that are getting baptized, you did your crickets, right? No, they're like, nope, we missed that part of the class. Then we can look at Jesus, who in some spaces, we're like, did he baptize people? And then in other spaces, he did baptize. We're not quite sure. But Jesus himself was baptized. The historical Jesus, I believe, was an early follower of John the Baptist. He believed in John's program, which was very confrontive of power. And then when John was murdered by Herod, when John was killed, I think Jesus was like, maybe that's not a good plan. Maybe we should rethink this. And so Jesus, whereas John would proclaim that the kingdom was coming, right? That there was this apocalyptic moment that was coming. Jesus, his message was quite different. His message was the kingdom is here, is present among us, living among us, dwelling among us. At least that's what the early followers of Jesus saw in him in that shift. And then we have like the early church. There's a document we have that's very old called the Didache, which is probably one of our earliest communal rules of like Christians that live together. And there's like a whole ritual of baptism and how it worked and what you did to prepare for it and when it happened. And most baptisms took place on Easter, and there was the buildup during Lent. And then we see like baptism kind of move forward, and then you have the Roman Catholic Church that gets established really under Rome. That's why it's called Roman Catholic Church, right? It was a part of the empire. It was part of the movement of Rome around the world. It was a part of colonization. And then in the 1500s, you have the Reformation that takes place, what's called the Protestant Reformation. And really, baptism and what baptism means here is kind of, in my opinion, one of the lowest points in the history of the church and how they thought about it. So just to give you a little bit of context, right? In the 1500s, we have the Reformation that takes place, the Protestant Reformation. Anybody know who led the Protestant Reformation? Martin Luther. Good job, everybody. Appreciate it. Not Martin Luther King, different. Martin Luther. 1500s. He nailed his 95 theses. Some people think I'm saying feces when I say that, but no, it's theses to the church door. He was trying to reform the church. He actually wasn't trying to create a new way of being church. He was saying, these are things that I think the church needs to be reformed. And the church in its power and in its wisdom was like, nope, sorry, you're gone. And so then we have the Protestant Reformation that gets started. And now within the Protestant Reformation, we start to see a lot of infighting about how baptism should work. And so you have the Swiss reformers and you have the German reformers, and this is all very exciting for most of you, I know. But basically what I want you to know that there were a group of Swiss reformers, and I'm not going to tell you their names because you're not going to remember them anyway, but there were a group of Swiss reformers, and they debated this idea of infant baptism that was taking place. And they said, no, we don't do infant baptism. We do what we're going to call believer baptism by immersion. And here's the thing. There was this big debate that said, well, infant baptism is really about upholding like a social, civic, kind of theological unity. And baptism of a child would mark their inclusion into the Christian community, into civic society, because you did not have separation of church and state, remember that. And so there was a group of people who were kind of radical, and they followed these early reformers who said, we don't actually want to baptize, we don't want to baptize infants, and they became known as the Anabaptists. Anybody ever heard of the Anabaptist movement? Nonviolent group of folks. Anabaptist just means rebaptizers. And so they believed that baptism should be a conscious, voluntary act done in faith by believers, not infants. Okay, so now you have this kind of real tension that takes place. And the Anabaptist refusal to baptize infants was seen by those in power, the church, as a very dangerous and subversive act. It was seen as a rejection of the state church system. It was seen as a way of undermining social order, social cohesion. And this was at a time where the church and civic identity, right, they were inseparable. So imagine if you were at this moment in history, and all of a sudden you have a group of people that are saying, no, we're not going to baptize infants. They're actually saying we're not part of this civic reality. We don't acknowledge that. And so you have a lot of tension that starts rising. And so in this moment, both the Catholic and the Protestant authorities saw the Anabaptists as heretical. So they became this group that were seen as heretical and seditious, because even the Protestant reformers were, most of them, baptizing children still, infants. And you go, well, what's the big deal? Well, early on, one of these leaders of the Anabaptists in Zurich, who really believed deeply in not baptizing infants and rebaptizing people, in 1527, he was executed by drowning. Now, who do you think did the execution? Not a trick question. The church did it all the time, still does it. The church, right? The civic authority, which was bolstered up by the church, that was the punishment. And it became this like grim mockery, and it was called the third baptism. So the first baptism in Anabaptist tradition would have been infant baptism. Then there was believer's baptism that was second. And then the third was execution by water. And during this time period, many Anabaptists were drowned, and they were burned, and they were beheaded all across Europe. And it became known as a baptism of blood. And it became this really awful but powerful symbol of their commitment to voluntary suffering as a follower of Jesus. I happen to think that that is like one of the most disgusting, saddest, horrible, dumbest things to have happened in human history. And if you want to know why I think following the Bible is a terrible idea, that's evidence number one. Because everybody in that time period said, we're actually following the Bible. And then they murdered people and executed them because they didn't follow the Bible the way they did. Like, history tells us following the Bible is a dangerous endeavor. Not learning from it. Wisdom is great. Applying it to our lives is good. But demanding that we follow it and follow it in our way is always a human endeavor of power. And I would love for everybody who calls Crossroads their home to remember that. And to always be leery when you hear we have to follow the Bible. Because I think that's rhetoric of power. I think that's rhetoric of finances. I think that's rhetoric of control. And just remember the Swiss reformers, the Anabaptists, who were murdered for the way they followed the Bible by people who said, we're actually following the Bible. And we should remember, as we get ready to watch and participate in some baptisms, that baptisms never meant one thing to everyone. Baptism has always had this like flow. It always had this like, what is it all about? And so how do I think about this ceremony today? How do we as a church approach it? Well, first of all, I want to say very clearly, if Jesus were to walk down here and see us doing this, I think Jesus would grab the microphone and be like, what is wrong with you people? Why are you still doing this? I think he'd be very confused, because baptism was a part of his culture. It was a part of his tradition. Like, I don't know if you know it or not, but we don't publicly baptize people in any other, this is not how we mark anyone's entrance into anything any longer. We give them a certificate, a diploma, something like that, right? We have a party. We have cake and ice cream, champagne, right? Most weddings, you don't see people like, as part of the wedding ceremony, like going through a ritual immersion and coming out now, right? And that's why I think there's something that we should just honor, that this is weird. I mean, and if you don't think it's weird that in a state where we are constantly under like drought and water shortages, that we have a tank full of clean water that we are going to dispose of, so that we can let's just honor that it's a little strange, okay? So if you're here today and you're like, I think this is weird, I'm with you. I do too, okay? But weird can be powerful, right? And so just really, really quickly, let me offer you kind of a fresh vision for like baptism here at Crossroads. We're, again, trying to think about this idea of the Christian tradition and following Jesus, following the life and the teachings and the stories, in terms of peacemakers. So the foundation for it all is this statement, Matthew 5:9, blessed are the peacemakers, second chance to get it right, for they will be called children of God. Like, it's that simple. I want to be known as a peacemaker. I want to be a part of a church that's what we're known for. Not for getting all our doctrines right, not for baptizing people one way, but we're peacemakers. And so we're reimagining the language and all these things that surround baptism and all kinds of things within that framework of Jesus' words, being a peacemaker. So here at Crossroads, we baptize in what I would say are meaningful ways to you as an individual. So if you as a parent want your child to participate in an infant baptism because that was part of your tradition growing up, I'll sprinkle, no problem. Let's do it. We'll do it as part of our child dedication, no problem whatsoever. I don't really care, it's great. If that's not part of your tradition and it was just a child dedication, an infant dedication, then we do that without the sprinkling. If you're an adult and you have a phobia of water, you don't want to get in a tank, you don't want to be in front of people, you just want a little sprinkling and this is important, then we'll do it that way. I've baptized people at Horsetooth Reservoir, baptized people here, sprinkled there, whatever. I don't care. Why do I care? Do you think God cares? I really don't. I think with all the issues going on in the world, if God is a sentient being, does God really care? I feel like there's other things that God would care about more if God existed in that way. Like, why are we still having children die of diarrhea? That feels like a bigger problem than, I cannot believe you sprinkled someone. But I'm crazy like that, right? Like, oh wow, we have people like in the richest country in the world who can't afford health care. Like, but that's really not important. Let's make sure that we get you fully under immersion, and here's the script. You better say it right or it doesn't work. I just don't know that the God that Jesus represents cares about that stuff. So we're going to try and focus on meaningful things in your spiritual journey, what makes sense to you, because I'm not here to tell you how to be spiritually healthy necessarily or what you have to believe. I'm here to walk alongside you as a spiritual person who can help guide you in a meaningful experience in your life within the Christian tradition. So I hold all of this very loosely, okay? And as a church, we just hold it loosely, okay? So we do the believer's baptism, we do the infant baptism. If you want to be baptized with Kool-Aid, that's fine. I'm down with it. You're like, I want red Kool-Aid because I really want that vibe, like I'm being baptized in the blood of Jesus. Great. We'll dump some packets in there. I love it. No problems. Are you getting the picture, right? That the how is not as important as the what and the why, okay? And that's kind of part of who we are, okay? So baptism is ultimately here about Jesus and our decision to follow in his peacemaking path. Maybe as a parent, if you're doing an infant baptism, I would say that it's about your desire to raise your child to understand the peacemaking path of Jesus, that they're loved, that they are to be a person of love. And so the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus, they reveal what we believe is the true nature of the divine, nonviolent, merciful, perfect love. And so by faith in that divine mystery that sustains all creation, the image of God is put into all humanity. And we say in our tradition that image of God was fully incarnate in the historical Jesus of Nazareth. And baptism is this moment in this context with, I would say, children, teenagers, adults, that they're saying, I want to be a peacemaker. I want to live in this love. The Jesus that we talk about here that reveals this nature of God, yes, that's what I'm all about. I want my life to be marked by nonviolence. I want my life to be marked by loving one another. I want my life to be marked by forgiveness. And so I'm going to live differently. I'm choosing that way. And there's all kinds of Bible metaphors for this. One of the big ones is life in the Spirit. It's just a metaphor, whatever word you like to use. If you were here and Aisha spoke about the Holy Spirit, Aisha loves that word. I love that she loves that word. Like that makes sense to her. Like you might think it as a different word. Like you might be like, it's the force. Oh, okay, that's cool. Let's talk about that. But there's this divine reality that sustains us all. Our tradition calls that the Holy Spirit, the experienced presence of the divine. And it's saying, I want to live in flow with that spirit. Not with the spirit of this world, not with a spirit of violence, not with a spirit of vengeance, not with a spirit of anger and hatred that will consume me, that will create hell. But I want to live in what Jesus would call, in his words, the kingdom of God, or the reign of God, the reign of love in this world. And so baptism is like, I am like dying to that way of thinking, right? So Paul uses this imagery at one point in time of dying with Christ and being raised to life in Christ in the Spirit. And Paul had kind of a really interesting way of thinking about sin in this one instance. He actually uses lots of different metaphors throughout his writings. So ultimately, it's this choice. I'm going to live by the Spirit. I'm going to live into that image of God that is in me, that produces healing in the world. And I believe that the lie that you are separated from God is the lie. You're actually not separated from the divine. What can separate you from the love of God? Nothing is the answer. But we believe that lie, and so we need our experiences that help us overcome that lie. But the greatest salvation experience is when you come to realize that that's the original lie in the story of the garden. And it's a lie that persists, that you need a holy of holies, that you need some intermediation to make you right, when all God is saying is you are loved and come to me, all who are weary, and you'll find rest. And so baptism is about that's what I want to live into. That's what I want. And that's what baptism is all about here at Crossroads. And we're celebrating that choice as a community. We're just celebrating it. So when people make that choice, we celebrate it, and we do this. And we do it in a way that makes sense to you all as an individual. And so today we have people that wanted to get baptized in the service. We thought, why don't we do this? Okay? Now I want everybody to understand that as we're celebrating a person's choice, we're also celebrating the same things we celebrate in communion. That this is an acknowledgement that love conquers, that love wins. That love produces more joy and more peace and more patience and more kindness and more generosity. And this is what a person is saying, I want my life to be marked by these things. And so baptism is kind of a ceremony that marks that decision. Because I do think there is a decision that has to be made as to how we want to live our lives. As soon as we think that decisions are not necessary in terms of this is how I want to live my life, this is who I want to be, then we'll end up floating around and we will become the loudest voice. But when we make intentional choices, that's, I think, what baptism can produce, is this intentional choice in our lives. Now, everybody should know that I think that baptism has at times produced harm in people's lives because it's been used as a tool. It's been used as a way of control and saying the only way that you're going to go to heaven is if we baptize you and things like that. Children have been baptized and have no idea what it's about and against their will. And so I'm very cautious when it comes to baptizing children and teenagers. Just because I think teenagers ultimately at their root are dumb, okay? And so, how many teenagers in the room? Look, parents are clapping. You'll get it one day, teenager. You will think, right now you know you're not dumb. I totally get that. But it'll hit you. It'll hit you. About 26, everything's going to form, and you're going to be like, holy, I was dumb. Okay? But it's cool, because we are okay with it. Our issue is we expect you not to be dumb, and that's on us. That's totally on us. That's why we get mad. That's why we lose our minds. That's why you have to go to therapy, because we forgot that you were dumb, and we should just own and honor that, okay? Fair enough? It's a seasonality of dumbness, all right? So parents, relax. Your teenager is dumb. It's a human reality. It's just a physical, chemical reality. That cocktail that's going on, it's just the dumb cocktail. That's what they're getting, okay? So just don't be dumber than them. Just acknowledge it and be like, oh, this is you being dumb. I love you. And just chill, okay? Let's us all relax a little bit, okay? So here's the thing. For me, it's very important that when we baptize children and teenagers that there's guardians and parents that are involved in the process. So we ask parents and guardians to be either in the baptism tank or to be next to the tank with children. Because I think that when a child is being baptized by somebody they've never met in a pool full of water and they're going under and coming up and they're never going to see this person again, that there's a tendency that could be a bad memory. Okay, I'll just let that one sit for a second, okay? So then they're 20 years later, and they're like, yeah, I just have this vivid memory of somebody trying to drown me. And I have no idea where my parents were when that happened, and they said something about blood, and they said something about death and life, and I don't know, So that's important. As teenagers, We think it's important that parents understand what's going on. It's a little, I think teenagers in their dumbness do make good decisions every now and then, right? Fair enough. This is a good one, I would say, But so we want parents to be engaged and understand the choice that their teenager's making. Even if a parent might disagree with that decision, we really do want to honor that, our kids are sentient beings, right? They do have rational thoughts. They do have opinions. We need to help form them in their values, things like that. So you should know that that's a part of your church, right? That we really do take into consideration, like, how do we do this in a psychologically healthy way, okay? So we have some baptisms today. Happens to be most of them are all teenagers. I'm so sorry. It's just humor. I don't really mean it. And some kids that are being baptized that have wanted to do that. And if you notice, we don't talk a lot about baptism here for a whole host of reasons, but there is always the invitation to participate in this. I did a baptism just a couple of weeks ago. Some folks reached out and said, we want to get baptized. Can we do it? We're leaving tomorrow. Like they had 3 days or something. But we did. We had a wonderful time. We went out to Horsetooth and we did a baptism. Last year we did. So we do it in different ways you might not see. It does get experienced. So we're going to do that. Now, what's your part in this, okay? What's your part in this? Well, your part is to sing. We're going to sing a song. Sing a song. Sing it. Okay. Thank you. All right. So we're going to sing a song called Wonder while we do baptisms today. And we chose this song because there's a lyric in this song that's really great. This lyric says, have you ever seen the wonder of the air of second life? Within baptism is this idea of a second life, is a new life. Not a life marked by fear of God, not a life marked by fear that there's not enough for everyone in the world, not a life marked by the fear of other, marked by racism or homophobia or sexism, but a life marked by love and inclusion and grace and mercy and generosity. And that is beautiful. And so this is that moment. So it says, have you ever seen the wonder of the air of second life, having come out of the water with the old one left behind? Now, as an adult, that has a lot of meaning. As like a 7-year-old, you're like, what is the old one I'm leaving behind? I totally get it. So if you're 7 years old and you're getting baptized, we're like, this is because we love you. Right? It is a little weird, okay? We're going with that theme, all right? So our job is to cheer and to sing. So when they come up out of the water, you cheer, clap, stop singing for that moment, and then start singing again. And then when they come out of the water, you cheer and clap. That's what we do as a community, to honor their choice, whether you agree with it or not. If you're here today and you don't agree with baptism, cheer for them because it's about them and not you, all right? So stand on up if you're able to. You're going to clap, we're going to sing, we're going to celebrate this moment. If you're a family or a friend of somebody who's getting baptized, you're welcome to go join them over at the tank. But let's celebrate.
In the glimmer of first sight, as the eyes begin to open and the blindness meets the light, if you have soul, say, I see the world in light, I see the world in wonder, I see the world in light, bursting in living color, I see the world your way, and I'm walking in the light. Having come out wilderness to wander.
Oh, I see the world in love.
I see the world in freedom. I see the Jesus way. You're the wonder in the world. I see the world your way, and I'm not ashamed to follow. I see the world your way, I'm not ashamed to say so. I see the Jesus way, oh, I'm walking in the light. I see the world in light, I see the world in wonder. I see the world in light, bursting in living color. I see the world your way, but I'm walking in the light. I see the world in grace, I see the world in gospel. I see the world your way, I'm walking in the light, walking in the wonder. Oh, you're the wonder in the world. Turn the wilderness to wonder.
That's so sick.
I see the world in love. I see the world in freedom. I see the Jesus way. You're the wonder in the world.
Love it. Nice job. Nice job, everybody. All right, go ahead and have a seat. We're going to get you out of here in just a moment. Every week we end with this question. What is it that the divine is inviting you into? What is it that God is inviting you today? Maybe you don't like that word. What is the universe inviting you in today? Why are you here this morning? Maybe it's just to continue to explore this life of faith. Maybe today you heard these ancient rituals talked about in a way that kind of made sense, that acknowledged they're strange. And you thought, maybe this is a place I could explore the idea of spirituality. Maybe you've been around for a while and you've never really felt comfortable participating in communion because you've said, well, I don't really know what it's about. I don't know if I'm worthy or not. Maybe you heard today that it's not about being worthy or not worthy. It's about what we want to experience and who we are. And so maybe you're feeling invited to just every week participate in communion. Maybe crazy enough, you're like, okay, now I get baptism. I've never done that. I'll do that. I'd like to do that. I'd like to learn more about that. There's a box on the back of your Connect card you can check, and we'll get you information. We don't sign you up. You know, it's not like you check the box and you're committed and there's no going back. You know, it's just like, I want information. Maybe you want to explore that. Maybe you want to get baptized. We'd love to do that. We got the tank set up. Cy would love nothing more than to have to take that down this week. All right? So we got it up. We can do some more baptisms here in the next couple of weeks. All right? What is it that God's inviting you into? So we're going to get you out of here, give you your blessing in just a moment. Wendy's got a real quick announcement about something pretty cool that's getting started, and then I'll be back for our blessing.
Okay, in just a minute, I'm going to ask those room hosts to come around to collect your donations and Connect cards. So while you're getting that ready, I want to tell you about our annual school supply drive. Crossroads partners in Edmondson Elementary School right here in Loveland, and each year we look for ways to support them as they work to rewrite the unacceptable truths of illiteracy and poverty. Edmondson is a Title I school. Now I want you to listen to these statistics. 39% of parents say they can't afford back-to-school shopping this year. 44% of parents plan to take on debt with back-to-school shopping, and more than 50% of parents plan to sacrifice necessities like groceries to ensure their child has what they need for school. This year in particular, Edmondson is facing a budget cut of 1/3. So as their partner, we want to help them meet the very specific needs within their community. In addition to providing a robust school supply drive for their families, Edmondson is looking to expand their offerings to include toiletries and household goods. Well, I know that some of you love back-to-school shopping. This year, Partners in Hope is asking specifically for monetary donations to go toward the school supply and toiletry drive. When we give money directly to Edmondson, they are able to purchase way more for their dollar than you or I can, even when we're shopping the big major sales this time of year. So your monetary donation truly is the best way to contribute. You can make a monetary donation by scanning the QR code on your screens or find it at crossroadscolorado.com/store. You can also stop by the table in the atrium and our team will be happy to help you make a payment. And if you absolutely must donate actual school supplies and toiletries, you can find the Edmondson list of most needed items in the Crossroads app. You can drop that off in the table in the atrium in the next 3 Sundays. So now I'm going to ask our room host to come around to collect your Connect cards and your weekly donations and pens. We'll get you out of here shortly.
Reach out now and take a hand. Help somebody while we can. Things will get better when we learn to love somebody, love somebody. Reach out now and take a hand. Help somebody while we can. Things will get better when we learn to love somebody, love somebody. Reach out now and take a hand. Help somebody while we can. Things will get better when we learn to love somebody, love somebody. Reach out now and take a hand. Help somebody while we can. Things will get better when we learn to love somebody, love somebody. So come on, all the sisters and brothers. We can all give a little more out to each other when it's all been said and done. We're gonna know us by our love. When it's all been said and done, they're gonna know us by our love.
All right. Well, we like to finish all of our experiences with a blessing. So if you would and you're able to, please stand. Don't forget, we have the after party afterwards, AKA the meet and mingle, but it's the after party. So stick around, find those people that are sopping wet. Tell them congratulations. You'll know who they are, all that good stuff. I have a very simple blessing for you today, but it's powerful. And I'll say this every now and then, but I think today's a good time to say it. So if you want to receive this blessing into your heart, may you experience the power of committing your life to loving your neighbor as yourself and the freedom to do anything you want. Amen. Have an awesome day.
When you see the road from every direction, it will give you eyes, give you hope, it'll give you perspective. I've been back and forth, and yeah, I had my crashes. Now I've seen the road, it goes every direction. Oh, there are stories to tell, times we grew and the times we fell. Oh, I've been afraid some days, but the road will lead us to a better place. Road will lead us to a better place. Dead ends come and go. Look toward the horizon. Up ahead you'll find a peace of mind, relief from the trying. I have burned a bridge, wrecked in a ditch, had to ask forgiveness. Dead ends come and go. Look toward the horizon. Oh, there are stories to tell. The times we grew and the times we fell. Oh, I've been afraid some days, but the road will lead us to a better place. Road will lead us to a better place. Oh, there are stories to tell. Times we grew and the times we fell. Ooh, I've been afraid some days, and the road will lead us to a better place.